Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
Pint Glass Football. I'm your host, Brad Fowler. What's up, PGF Nation? Are the Steelers Super Bowl contenders? The Lions, with an incredible comeback on Sunday Night Football. One NFL coach is now officially a dead man walking. Can Colorado shock the world and make the college football playoff? We've got a bunch of NFL and college football to get to, but joining me, of course, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
Interesting. Dead man walking head coach. I'll be interested to hear who that is because I actually don't know who it is.
Yeah, sometimes we got to have a organic response, so we don't go over everything in the pre-production meetings here, Alex. So, yeah, we'll get to it here in a second. I think when you hear the name, you'll know exactly why. But, look, I want to start here with the Sunday Night Football game because I have never felt stronger about this Lions team than I do right now. And you're probably wondering, like, okay, wait, Jared Goff looks terrible. The offense, for the most part, was really out of sync. They're turning the ball over. Probably played one of their worst games of the year. But for me, Alex, that win really showed me that this team is absolutely for real. And on the road versus another division leader, this game, I think, really felt like a playoff game, even though it was an AFC versus NFC matchup. Teams that don't play each other very often. But look, Goff plays his worst game maybe ever. They fight back, find a way to win this game. This is what great teams do. When you don't have your best stuff, you fight and you find a way. Look, this is a team that they can win in a shootout. They can win in a slugfest or any style of game in between. I am really impressed right now with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed. I was more impressed with the defense because the offense was just, kind of all over the place. Unlike Jared Goff, who had been on a run of basically 75 to 80% every single game and with barely any turnovers. But it was really the defense. And specifically, I would like to point out Alem McNeil, the defensive tackle. He literally was a game wrecker. We talk about the TJ Watts or your Max Crosby's or whoever, but Alem McNeil, he was getting CJ Stroud off his spot the entire game. I mean, he ended with 6 tackles, a sack, and 2 tackles for loss and a QB hit. But that doesn't tell the story because he was literally pushing CJ Stroud off the spot. And to his credit, a play that CJ Stroud should have made, which was a wide open John Mechie in the end zone, he lofted or flicked it and had so much air under the ball, it allowed Carlton Davis to come from one side of the field to the other side of the field. He underthrew it as well. This was on the quarterback because he was able to set his feet. Instead of throwing it to the back of the end zone where John Mechie started to run to, he had to turn around and come back and was barely able to make a play on Carlton Davis, who caught his second interception of the game. So Houston, to me, from my perspective, should have won the game, but then the fortitude of the Lions, again, this was really a win for the Lions defense as far as I am concerned, because we know that offense, I mean, Jared Goff had 5 interceptions. 5. And again, like I said, unlike him, the running game wasn't as dominant. They ran 32 times for only 105 yards at 3.3 yards a carry. So it was the defense that made a lot of the big plays here.
That is the kind of win that, quite frankly, this franchise just doesn't have in its history. We know the history of this franchise is not very good, but they are a different team with Campbell. They're a different team with this leadership group and with this current roster. And they're showing that they are built to win big games. And that win was so impressive. Now, the Steelers had a pretty impressive win against a upstart Commanders team. And look, this team is better than I expected. I'm just going to say it. I thought they'd be good. I didn't think they'd be this good. This is quite the start now for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Russ has clearly made a big impact on this offense, way more than I expected. They were scoring about 20 points a game with Fields at quarterback. They're now scoring 30 points per game with Wilson. So we can see the difference here. We know that the defense is good. We knew they'd be good coming into the year. They have playmakers around Wilson. The question that I'm hearing in the media, and it seems to be everywhere right now, is are they a Super Bowl contender?
We're about to find out. So the next 5 weeks, we're actually to the end of the season, they face Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Cleveland, at Philly, at Baltimore, Kansas City, and then Cincinnati. Cincinnati is not going to go away. They're just simply too good not to go away. So those are going to be tough. Cleveland, we can ball them up. But these, like I said, from now until the end of the season, they are facing formidable teams with the exception of Cleveland every single week. So I guess perhaps after Christmas, maybe by Christmas, which they happen to play the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas, we're going to know a lot more about how real the Pittsburgh Steelers and Russell Wilson are.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to rain on the Steelers parade. This was a really good win. A win that, by the way, guys, if you've been checking out the YouTube channel where we talked about this game in particular, and we took Pittsburgh +3 in this game, by the way, guys. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel, get that exclusive content. But as far as a Super Bowl contender, I'm hearing that a lot right now. I'm going to say no, Alex. I don't think they are. I think it's a good story. I think they're a good team. They're a competitive team. I think they're going to be a tough out for a lot of teams. But as far as the AFC, look, I'll take Baltimore. I'll take Buffalo, Kansas City, Houston. I might even take LA ahead of them in the AFC right now. And if you're questioning the LA pick, look, Justin Herbert, since the bye, right? Since the Chargers bye, the Chargers have gone 4-1, and Herbert is completing 67% of his passes, averaging 262 yards a game, 6 touchdowns, no picks, a 107.4 passer rating. And one thing that I also like, Alex, is I'm seeing a lot of this that I haven't seen in the past is he's making a lot more off-script plays. He's using his legs more, and I think it's paying off for this Chargers offense.
Yeah, and just real quick on the Chargers, they don't have the receiving core that Herbert has had when we've watched him throw for basically one, lead the league in attempts, and then 2, be in the top 5 or top 3 in terms of passing yards. Like you said, he's thrown only 1 interception the entire year, and that's really due to, he's had to play, they haven't had a lot of talent at the receiver position. I mean, basically, it's Lad McConkey, and then a resurgence of Quentin Johnson, who's kind of tailed off the last few games. So it's really just Lad McConkey, which is really intermediate throws, maybe about 7 to 12 yard throws, because he's a slot guy. So they've been using that very well. I think the main thing with the Chargers is, how is this running game going to hold up? Because they don't have anybody after J.K. Dobbins. There isn't a guy. Gus Edwards is still hurt. Kaimani, I believe his name, Kaimani Vidal, he only has 44 yards rushing. And that's it. The entire offense, which is really truly a run-first offense, is all on J.K. Dobbins. This is probably the biggest workload that he's ever had in his career coming off these injuries. It's really going to be on, can they maintain running the ball? Not necessarily the quarterback, because they just simply don't have the talent. Can they maintain running the ball as effectively as they have been?
Yeah, and look, I brought up Herbert and how well he's played, and I think he deserves some credit, but this defense has been lights out. This has been one of the best defenses in the NFL, and they're playing some really good football. Now, I wanted to briefly mention Washington. We talked about Pittsburgh not watching the game. Ended up being a great game, really awesome back and forth, entertaining game, one of the best games of the weekend. But here's the thing. I want to pump the brakes on Washington because, look, is this a good team? Yes. Are they better than most people realize? Yes. Is Jaden Daniels, is he having an unbelievable rookie year? Absolutely. But here's the truth about Washington. They've lost to the 3 best teams they've played this year. The Ravens, the Bucks when they were healthy, and the Steelers. And look, they should have lost to Chicago. Obviously, we know what happened there with the Hail Mary. And they should have lost to the Giants early in the year if the Giants would have had a healthy kicker. So, look, this team is good. They're not great. And I think that's kind of how I feel about Pittsburgh right now. And both these teams have a really good record. They both look like they're headed to the playoffs at this point. I'm not ready to put them in that contender group.
Yeah, I can agree with that as well, especially when we talk about the coaching. I mean, Mike Tomlin is a well-seasoned, Super Bowl winning, perennial playoff coach, so he knows how to coach in some of these big games. And and people say, "Oh, you're just hating on." No, we're not hating on Washington, but it's like you said, the 3 teams that they played, that were basically playoff contenders, they lost. And just real quick, we have to keep the same energy about the Chargers. The big teams that they did play, they lost. And that's okay. You're learning to win. You're a franchise that hasn't been perennial playoffs. And on the Washington side, you just haven't been a good football team for the most part. So now you're going to go through, similar to what you weren't as bad as Detroit, but you're going to go through the matriculation that Detroit went through, where you're starting to win games and then you're going to have to figure out how to win some of these close games and then take the next steps and matriculate. So you're on the right track. You're just not in the Super Bowl bubble.
Yeah, speaking of teams that's on the right track, is I think the Denver Broncos are on the right track. And I think that game versus KC, man, what a gut punch for them. They had Kansas City on the ropes. Denver, when you look at this game, they had a more efficient passing game. They were more efficient on the ground. They didn't turn the ball over. I've been saying this for weeks now. Look, Mahomes in this offense just isn't very good. Now, they weren't very good last year, but they win games with this defense. And I keep coming back to it, but the defense is carrying this team right now. Outside of the defense, it's basically Andy Reid dialing up a great play call on third down. Mahomes pulls the occasional rabbit out of a hat when they need it the most, it seems like. But Alex, I think this is one of the least impressive 9-0 teams I've seen, which, look, I get just saying it out loud sounds crazy since they're the defending back-to-back champs. But we got to really look at this team right now because 8 teams have a better point differential than Kansas City, and they're undefeated right now. Kansas City has won just 2 games by more than 1 score this whole season. Look, I'm going to give them credit. They find ways to win. They've got that championship medal, but I have not been impressed with the Chiefs, even though they're undefeated right now.
To your point, Kansas City, they are not impressive. Patrick Mahomes, we know he's kind of maybe stopped a little bit of the turnovers that he had early in the season, but this is the same thing that happened last season. Now they are without Rashee Rice, but they did get DeAndre Hopkins. So probably by game 3, well, this was the second game with DeAndre, but probably by game 4 and 5, we're going to start to see this offense start to hum a little bit more because Travis Kelce has now started to heat up. 14 catches, 10 catches, and now this game, 8 catches. And DeAndre Hopkins still needs to get acclimated to the offense. I think this will start to look a lot better, which will be good for them as they start to roll into the deeper part of the season and then into the playoffs. But you're absolutely right. It is not an impressive team. But I will say again, this is exactly how they looked last year going in, as they went through the season, and Mahomes was trying to help raise young pups in terms of receivers. But now this time you have DeAndre Hopkins. So it's just a matter of getting him acclimated. And then I think we're going to start to see this offense look a little bit more stable.
Look, a quarterback that has really taken a downturn, Sam Darnold, unfortunately, I think has turned back into Sam Darnold. Look, he has 6 turnovers in his last 2 games. He has 11 turnovers over his last 6 games. The Vikings are 7-2, but I don't trust this team at all. They only got away with Darnold really falling apart because they played the Jags and the Colts the last 2 weeks. Look, this team, it's funny because we keep talking. It's almost like a theme here, Alex, and I don't know why this is, but there's a lot of teams right now with good records that I don't trust, and I am circling the Vikings as one of them.
Yeah, you're going to have to circle the Vikings one. And we did see Aaron Jones get hurt in this game. And that's a big, huge blow if he's going to miss any type of time or if he's not going to be at full strength. I know they traded for Cam Akers. He's not Aaron Jones. And you're right, Sam Darnold. Now, what I will say is I'm going to take this game and I'm going to watch the next 2 games because this game, he just wasn't good at all. 3, like you said, 3 interceptions and then a couple of fumble or 2, but I think he was able to recover. But I'm going to wait and see what they look like as they go down the stretch to see what this team is going to look like. And then also, what does Green Bay start to look like? Can they turn the corner and perhaps overtake Minnesota? And as I take a look at Minnesota's next few games, they have a couple of games that they can probably rip off a few wins. Now there's Tennessee. We 1,000 think they can beat them. Now then there's Chicago. In Chicago, I don't know at any point if we're going to have a Caleb Williams conversation because I don't know what that was we saw on Sunday And then there's shaky Arizona. So maybe they can rip off 3 wins here and get back on where they were when they started the season, and get back before they start to face Atlanta, which is a formidable team, and then as well as Green Bay and then the Lions. So I'll wait another game, after these 3 games to reassess what I think about him.
Yeah, I think we do need to talk about Caleb Williams. And more importantly, though, I think we need to have a conversation about the Bears as a whole right now. Because do you remember this offseason when so many people were saying how great of a situation Caleb Williams was going into? I know we talked about it, and so did every other media outlet out there. The offensive line is terrible. Now, I know they were down, I think it was 4 of their 5 starters in this game on Sunday, but they've been terrible. They've been really disappointing. Rome Odunze hasn't looked like the guy that we expected, at least to this point. Now, I know he's a rookie, but he hasn't lived up to it. Keenan Allen has slowed down, and he's really starting to look his age right now. And if I was the coach of the Bears right now, or in charge of this franchise, I would have traded DJ Moore at the trade deadline, because his lack of effort is awful when you watch the tape. The offensive play calling has been terrible. It lacks creativity. It's predictable. Now, Williams hasn't been great, and some of those sacks are on him holding the ball too long, and that's absolutely fair. I'm not going to put all the blame on the team around him, but this roster still has holes, and this coaching staff, I think, is officially toast. And Eberflus, I think, is the dead man walking here, because this guy has shown poor game management, bad in-game decisions, and just bad overall situational football. And I think the team is starting to turn on him.
So the first thing is, I'll answer the DJ Moore. Well, I don't think they would, because they would incur a $20 million cap hit, and maybe that's just something. Because remember, they gave him a new deal once he got after the first season that he was there. They gave him a new deal, so that's probably partly why they wouldn't be able to trade him. They didn't want to take that cap hit, because as I'm looking at it right now, it looks like about a $20 million cap hit if they did trade him at the trading deadline. So maybe that's part of it. The other part of it is, the one thing that we did say, we did believe he was coming to a great situation. But the other thing that we said was, why are you keeping the coach? You're bringing in this guy. He is a high potential, came in one of the highest marks at the quarterback position. Give him an offensive coach, whether you went after Ben Johnson that came from Detroit, or whoever it might have been. You needed to give him an offensive coach as well that knew how to bring him along when he starts, like we said, holding on to the ball too long, which was what was a big problem at the beginning of the season. But also, the running game has been up and down, and when he's decided to use Cole Kmet and decided to dump down to DeAndre Swift, we've seen this team look a lot better. But it seems that it's an up and down and out. If you want to say in terms of percentage, how much you want to give to Caleb versus the offensive coaching staff, which includes the head coach, even though he's defensive, I think this really falls on Ryan Poles, because I thought he made a lot of nice moves. You could argue about if he should have taken one of the offensive tackles as opposed to Rome Odunze, but I think a lot of this really falls on the coaching and scheme and what is best for Caleb Williams to watch him do some of the things that we saw in USC when he had protection and when he didn't have protection.
Yeah, and to your point, look, Matt Eberflus is a defensive guy, and we know that. And so he doesn't have a whole lot to do with the offensive troubles that we've seen from the Bears. However, he made the last 2 offensive coordinator hires, and both have been big swings and misses. So from that standpoint, if you're going to keep this guy, which I don't think they are, but if you are, you better not let him hire the next one, because he clearly does not have an eye for that side of the ball. Alex, I think we've got to talk about it. And look, maybe it's just in our contract. Maybe it's just because we're a football podcast and we absolutely have to. But look, the Dallas Cowboys are now a dreadful 0-4 at home. They're also 1-5 in the NFC. Look, I think it's time to give Trey Lance a shot to start. I know we saw a little bit of Trey Lance on Sunday, but at this point, you got to wave the white flag. This team is going to have a top 5 pick in April. The Eagles completely embarrassed this team at home on Sunday.
I'm going to take a victory lap. I feel that we should. We said, do not sign Dak Prescott right now. Wait until the end of the season. The number was not going to move. All of the quarterbacks have been paid. So you know what the number was at the beginning. And during this offseason, it's going to be the same number in the next offseason, because no quarterback is going to get paid. So wherever you think the number will be, it's still going to be at the end of the season. Now, if you want to sign CeeDee Lamb, I get it, because you want to retain him because Jamar Chase hasn't been signed. So there's you want to say, let's get him under contract so we don't have to deal with a waiting game with the Jamar Chase. Fine. Micah Parsons still has some time, so they can wait on that because he's still on his rookie deal. But Dak Prescott, this is the second time that I've said to Dallas Cowboy fans, you should tank. When Dak got hurt and he was in the final year of his rookie contract, I said, wait and tank. And then, because the number one thing I think that you want in life is options. So whether you wanted to keep Dak, or perhaps you ended up with the first round pick, and what we're saying about Trevor Lawrence now, but when we go back to then, he was an incredible prospect. You could have had him on this team. Once again, had you waited in terms of signing Dak Prescott, and everything happens and plays out the way that it played out, and like Brad just said, you're sitting with a top 5 pick, and perhaps you can be number 1 depending on how the rest of the season plays out. Hey, you could be sitting there to get Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, or whichever is that you fancy in that situation. So lastly, when Derrick Henry says he wants to come to your team and you say no and say, I'd rather Ezekiel Elliott, because that's what you said. When you said no to him and you said we want Ezekiel and we'll sign Ezekiel Elliott, you essentially said we'll pass on you, Derrick Henry, and we want Ezekiel Elliott. That's what you did. Tyler Guyton started out looking okay the first 2 games, and he's now become exactly what I thought he was. I know he missed a game, but he has not been good either. Whether you start Cooper Rush, which they did say they're going to start him again, or whether you start Trey Lance, you're now in tank mode to do what exactly? I don't even know what you do if you get a top 5 pick, because you can't get a quarterback. You're not going to draft a running back that high. So I guess you're going to probably draft the best offensive lineman or the defensive tackle or pass rush out, the one out of Tennessee, or the Smith kid, the DT out of Michigan. I guess that's what you're setting yourself up for.
Yeah, I think you're actually hoping and praying that Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward and some of these quarterbacks play lights out here down the stretch and in the college football playoff, and hoping that you're sitting there with the top 5 pick and that you can trade out of that spot and get some assets, because this team has a bunch of holes on this roster. Now, I want to quickly talk about the Eagles here, because the Eagles stomped a bad Dallas team. Look, that's what they are. And they're without Dak, like you mentioned. So it's even worse right now. Everyone is talking about the 4 touchdowns for Hurts and how great he looked, but nobody is mentioning that he had 2 more turnovers. He has 9 already this year. Look, that doesn't hurt you versus a bad team like Dallas, but in the playoffs, it will. They also gave up 5 sacks for minus 46 yards in the first half to a bad Dallas defense. Philly has a really good roster, and they have a really good record right now. But once again, going back to this narrative, I don't trust this team.
Well, like you said, they have a good team. What they don't have is a good coach.
49ers on Sunday tried to give this game away versus the Bucs. Special teams blunders, which, wow, side note, special teams have been a serious ongoing issue for this team. Key defensive penalties, but they overcome 2 fourth-quarter deficits. Brock Purdy made 2 big-time throws on a go-ahead touchdown drive, a 30-yard pass under pressure to McCaffrey that was lights out, and then extending a play that led to an 11-yard touchdown pass to George Kittle that made it 20-17. The Niners defense had 4 penalties after that. Tampa Bay sets up a game-tying field goal drive. Purdy then drove the Niners 39 yards to Moody's game-winning 44-yard field goal kick on the final play. Look, I was really impressed with Brock Purdy in this game, and look, I know that I'm higher on this guy than some people, and I know there's a lot of debate about where this guy ranks with quarterbacks and this and that. He had a shaky start to this game, but then went 10 for 14 for 160 yards and a touchdown in the fourth quarter. This guy, for the most part, shows up in big spots, and that is one thing that you really can't coach. You either have it or you don't, and I think Purdy does.
Okay, one thing I'll say is that was a beautiful pass on the adjustment by George Kittle to get to that corner, but the throw to the back pylon, CJ Stroud, and this is what I was talking about, because he had to scramble, and when he scrambled, he set his feet, he threw the ball to the back pylon where either it was going to be an overthrow or either the receiver was too far for the receiver or he was going to catch the ball. There's no way that the defender would have been able to make a play on the ball. What a dart that was. So I agree with you there on on Brock Purdy. However, ball the 49ers up. They're done. Put them on the grill for Thanksgiving. They're done. They're not going anywhere. It's over. I kept saying that I told you the last 2 years that we've been doing this, but that was their window. Their window is over. And I'll tell you the play that let me know their window was over. Baker Mayfield flushed out of the pocket by Nick Bosa, got stiff-armed by Baker Mayfield, and he was still able to make a play. You guys don't want to win. No, matter of fact, I'll say the way I was going to say. Y'all don't want to win. Y'all don't. So, boy, you guys are done. Stick a fork in you. It's over. You had a chance to make a run. You made mistakes for whatever reason to retain Brandon Ayuk instead of trading him in the offseason, not right before the season started, in the offseason when you could have gotten more picks to fortify this defense, specifically on the defensive back end. You guys are done. You look terrible. You have a quarterback, which looks like, obviously, with a guy like Kyle Shanahan. You seem to have a receiver there and Ricky Pearsall, which is why you should have traded Brandon Ayuk. But you guys are done. Christian McCaffrey, I'm sorry, great player for his time. This is another Todd Gurley in the making here. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry. You guys are done. You did not look good. I was not impressed, and now no one is scared of you anymore. You guys are done.
The Niners are 5-4, and I don't think they're the same team they were, to your point. But we have to remember last year they started 5-3. The year before that they were 4-4. The year before that they were 4-4. I'm not selling my Niners stock just yet. Now, do I think they're as good as Detroit? No. Do I think they're as good as some of these other top contenders? Probably not. They're probably in that tier below those teams at this point. But I'm just not ready to sell that stock yet. I still think they have the talent, the coach, and the quarterback. And when you have that, you've always got a shot in this league. So we've seen these slow starts from them, and then they turn it on. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to this year, to your point. That window for this current team might have closed, but I'll be interested to see how these next couple of weeks go. That is for sure. Did you know that Pint Glass Football is more than just this podcast? We have an exclusive newsletter. Sign up for free at pintglassfootball.com to receive articles and insights delivered straight to your inbox. But wait, there's more. We're excited to announce our brand new YouTube channel. Not only can you listen to our podcast on YouTube, but you'll also find exclusive video content waiting for you. So hit the pause button right now and go subscribe to our newsletter, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube to stay connected with the latest football news and our exclusive content. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. We personally love the pick'em game. Just pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Download the Underdog Fantasy app and sign up today with promo code PGF. That's promo code PGF to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. The official ticketing app of Pint Glass Football is now SeatGeek. I can't recommend them enough, guys. I've been using SeatGeek for years. You want to go to a game this season? SeatGeek is here to take the confusion out of buying tickets, making sure you get the best seats at the best prices. With SeatGeek, you'll never have to worry about overpaying for tickets again. How? They put a 0 to 10 score on each ticket, so you know you're getting a good deal. But here's the real game changer. You can get $20 off your first ticket purchase with the code PGFPOD. That's right, $20 off with code PGFPOD. This season, make every game day epic with SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and remember to enter the code PGFPOD to grab your $20 discount. Alex, college football, I think, has never been better than it is right now. Nothing, and I mean nothing, is for certain in college football right now. And look, it's not like in the past where there were only a handful of blue blood teams that were really alive late in the year like this when we had the 4-team playoff. And look, it was even worse in the BCS era where really you're just looking at like 2 teams, maybe 3 that could get into that championship game. we have more parity leading into the first ever 12-team college football playoff, and I think it's been so great for the sport. And look, side note here once again, guys, I hope you guys have been watching our exclusive content that we've been putting out on YouTube, because we took Ole Miss over Georgia. This game started out rough for Ole Miss. It looked like Georgia was going to roll early, and then Ole Miss goes on a 28-3 run the rest of the way. This is a big win for this program. It's a big win for Lane Kiffin. We called this basically a de facto playoff game for Ole Miss. They had to have it to stay alive. They played their best game of the year. Look, this team could absolutely make a run, and I think a legitimate run at a national championship, Alex.
Now, I'm not that confident in Ole Miss, and that's really because I want Lane Kiffin. But honestly, I'm not that confident in Ole Miss. But what I will say is what I've been saying: whenever there's any type of big game, Carson Beck shrinks. Started out as a guy that was a projected top 3 pick, and a lot of people had them number 1 on his board. He has completely folded up and sold it in every single time that he's had a chance to rise to the occasion and prove us wrong, or other people that don't have him on that tier anymore. He is continuing to shrink, and with a quarterback like that, I'm going to sit here and agree with you that the Bulldogs are out even if they make the playoffs or not. Now, Ole Miss, think they are on the bubble, and depending on how they go the rest of the season is really going to determine where they could end up and if they could legit be a true playoff contender here. I'm not sure, Brad. Like, what do you think in terms of where they go for the rest of the year? Because they have us, they play us Florida at Florida. We're crappy. And then they end the season with Mississippi State. I'm not sure if that's going to be enough to push them up the ladder where they want to go.
Well, I think they're going to get an at-large bid. And I think the committee is already telling us that the Big Ten and the SEC are looking at more than likely 4 teams each. So with that being said, I think they're going to get one of those spots. No disrespect to Mississippi State or Florida, but I think those are wins if they play the type of football we've seen from them the last couple of weeks. I just think this is a team that's clicking right now at the right time. And usually those are the kind of teams that you have to circle and watch out for when you're playing good down the stretch and you're getting hot when it really matters right now. And I just love the way this team is playing. And to your point about Carson Beck, look, Georgia's offense just isn't good enough for them to win a national championship. I really thought that this team could get back to the big game and win the whole thing. And look, they still might, but I would be shocked because I am so unimpressed with this offense and Carson Beck. He has regressed as a quarterback, and a guy that, like you said, a lot of us thought was going to take that next step from what we saw last year and really turn into one of these top prospects. He's looking more like a mid-round pick at this point. The offensive line is bad. It's just a lopsided team. It's a great defense, but the offense is just so bad. And they find themselves really in a de facto playoff game versus Tennessee on Saturday because 3 losses, and I think they're done. So really interesting how this whole thing is shaking out in the SEC. And like I said a minute ago, anything can happen in college football right now.
And you're absolutely right, Brad, because as I look at the updated rankings, Ole Miss is sitting at 10, and Georgia's right there at 11, and Miami, which I'm sure we'll get to soon, is sitting there at 12. So they are now officially on the bubble.
Yeah, look, we got to talk about Miami because I said all year, and I've said it all year long, that Miami is a fraud. And I've said eventually they'd lose to a team that, quite frankly, they have no business losing to, and they did. Look, this is what you get when you get Mario Cristobal. He's a great recruiter and a guy who can build a great roster with NFL talent. He's shown that time and time again, and that's what he's done in Miami. And look, this team has talent, and they're a good team, but he's always going to find ways to mismanage games and get out-coached in games. They've been flirting with an L all season long. We've seen several times this year where they've squeaked by and barely beat teams and come back in big ways, or Cam Ward had to put the Superman cape on and carry this team late in games to find wins. They've been flirting with this for a while now. So I'm not the least bit surprised by this. And look, more than likely they're going to make the playoff. I think they're still going to win the ACC. Once they get to the playoff, zero trust in this team. I think they're going to get smoked. And look, I love Cam Ward. I think he's a really fun quarterback, a guy that I've been talking about since last year when nobody was paying attention. But at the same time, I just don't trust this coaching staff, and I don't trust this team in a big spot.
Well, the one thing I'll say is the rest of their season, I trust they'll beat Wake Forest. The Syracuse game, similar to the Georgia Tech game, that's at Syracuse. It's going to be an interesting game because that is a feisty coach up there with a feisty team, and they like to fight. So it'll be interesting. But like you said, this has really been this team. When you were saying that and you were saying that they look like frauds, I was looking at this team and to liken it to a NFL team. Do you remember when the Vikings were just simply outscoring people? The defense was ranked 31st, but the offense was ranked first. This is what this team looks like. If they're not, because they were first in scoring. I'm not sure what their updated rankings look like. They were averaging 45 points a game, so they were number one in scoring. So unless they're scoring 45 points a game, they're going to have a problem because the defense cannot make plays. Georgia Tech ran for, it looked like an NCAA video game. They ran for almost 300 yards. They ran for 271 yards. That is not going to bode well for you when you have to go up against other ACC talent. And then further, if you do make the playoffs, if you end up having to face one of these top teams, because you'll be at the bottom of that playoff bucket, you're going to face one of these teams that's just simply going to run all over you.
Yeah, could you imagine if somehow they end up as an at-large? Let's say Clemson wins the ACC and they end up somehow at the 5 seed and they play Boise State. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Could you imagine them trying to stop Ashton Jeanty?
That line is going to start at 200 yards rushing. I promise you it will.
Oh, my gosh, the hypotheticals. Look, the number one team in the country, Alex, Oregon, they keep rolling. I don't have a ton to get into on this game, but offensively, they didn't look very sharp for the first time in a long time in this game. If you didn't catch this game and you just looked at the box score, you might think, oh, yeah, Oregon, they smoked Maryland, no big deal. But look, Maryland hung around a lot longer in this game than I expected. And nobody right now is talking about how good this defense is for Oregon because the offense was shaky for most of this game, but the defense absolutely took this game over late, back-to-back picks to really seal it for Oregon and make this score look a lot more lopsided than it was. And on a side note here, Maryland has some NFL wide receivers. I was not aware of how good these guys were on the outside. Circle the name Ty Felton. Man, he was a problem on Saturday for Oregon. And this is an Oregon team with NFL talent in that secondary, and this guy was a serious problem.
Yeah, but this really sums up one thing for me. Have defense and will travel. If you have a defense, you're going to have a chance because they can make up for some of the mistakes you make or lack of offense you may have. They'll keep you in the game and allow you to be able to come back and make a play.
Yeah, and a team that you've talked about with the defense, and it's been one of the surprise teams, especially on that side of the ball, because we knew that the offense, we kind of knew some of the names on the offense, especially was Colorado. And that defense is starting to play really well. They're starting to look like a complete football team right now. Colorado comes back after being down 13-0, beats Texas Tech on the road, which, by the way, that's a hostile environment. Travis Hunter in this game played 155 snaps. What we are seeing from this guy is absolutely unheard of. We've never seen anything like it. I know we talk about this guy all the time, but I'm so amazed by this kid. He is the best cornerback in college football and one of the best wide receivers in college football. He is so fun to watch. He had another huge game. Shedeur Sanders was absolutely lights out, continues to be lights out. The defense, to your point, Alex, they fly around. 6 sacks, 2 turnovers. Colorado won its 3rd consecutive game. And look, guys, don't look now, but they're on pace to play in the Big 12 championship game with a chance to qualify for the 12-team college football playoff. The best story in college football right now is Colorado. And get this, I just checked. The odds, as of now, they are the odds-on favorites to win the Big 12.
Well, I'll start with Travis Hunter first because you were talking about odds. I thought you were about to say what I was going to say. So Travis Hunter is now officially the leader in the clubhouse, followed by Ashton Jeanty and Dylan Gabriel, and then Cam Ward. I'll stop right there. So Travis Hunter is the leader, as he should be, in the clubhouse for the Heisman Award, and that'll be special if he wins that, and given the year that he's having on both sides of the ball. Now, like you said, they're on the path. Now, I think there's still one thing that can happen, and it almost happened. Utah. Had they beat BYU, I think that would have put them in really truly in a driver's seat to continue on the path that they're on, winning the games that they need to win. And as they now face Utah next week, then they're at Kansas, and then they finish with Oklahoma State. The Oklahoma State game is the one game, their speed. It's not that they're a better team. It's just the speed of that team in terms of a matchup is the one game that I worry about. And now, yes, Alex is going to pull back on what he said. I was a person that said 5 wins at the most. I am on the bandwagon of the Colorado to win out and hopefully be in the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, I don't know if there's enough seats left on that bandwagon because people are jumping on quick, man. This Colorado team has been fun to watch. And I know if they make the college football playoff, wow, the ratings bonanza that is going to be. I'm rooting for it, Alex. I am absolutely rooting for it. And look, you mentioned Utah real quick. I got to bring this up. That 4th down holding call on Utah in the late in the 4th quarter of the Holy War, that cost them a big top 10 upset win over BYU. That was horrible. That was a horrible call. They should have won this game. The refs really stole this away from them with a terrible call. Really unfortunate because it was a great game. It was an awesome atmosphere, but unfortunately, I think Utah got robbed right there.
And to say, just to let you guys know how much they got, we're talking about a game that was 22-21. It wasn't any type of a touch. It was 1 point difference. So I do want to say something really quick before we get out of here. We also need to take a victory lap on Alabama over LSU because I was not scared of LSU at all. I didn't think they were going to be in this game at any point in time. And then we need to talk about Mike Norvell because I didn't think he was on the hot seat. But that Notre Dame loss, my God.
Look, I know Notre Dame is a good football team, and I think they're headed for the college football playoff. But wow, Florida State, man, have they been the most disappointing team in college football? Hands down. I don't think it's even debatable. They are 1-9, 52-3 on Saturday. This team has completely gone off the rails. If you guys remember, they came into the year with a top 10 ranking going into the season. This was the program that everyone talked about how they got robbed of the college football playoff last year after going undefeated. What happened to this program? It's actually incredible. I don't know. I can't remember a time ever, Alex, just thinking off the top of my head here, a team has gone from undefeated in the national title mix. I know they didn't get into the playoff, but they were certainly in the conversation. From that to 1-9 and getting absolutely destroyed week in and week out is unbelievable.
But lastly, University of Florida. Why would you make the announcement that Billy Napier is coming back now instead of just waiting till the end of the season? And if that's what you want to say, perhaps closer to the last game or whatever point in time before you really start to I know you probably vetted some people that you wanted, but you never know who may come up and say something, Lane Kiffin. I don't know. That's just my hope. Or even if it's Deion, who knows? But I don't understand their point in making this announcement now. I think by making this announcement now, you've just made every single recruit that may have been considering Florida looking for perhaps a coaching change completely just X them off the list.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Napier is not exactly a hot name in coaching circles right now. So I don't think you had to let the rest of college football know that he's not available. So yeah, pretty odd situation there in Florida because they've been bad, and I don't think it's getting any worse. And look, I don't know if Napier's the guy or not. It doesn't look like it. It really doesn't. I know he's brought in some decent recruits, but the wins just aren't there. And you can only use this excuse of, well, the SEC is good. Yeah, so what? You're Florida. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to compete with these guys if you have the right coach in place. So I think his seat should be red hot right now. If you enjoy the podcast, do us a favor and subscribe, rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.
Zencastr is the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. It provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content all from one dashboard. Zencastr's post-production process takes the headache out of audio production. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. Coordinating all your guests to record in person is painful and tedious. Easily invite up to 11 participants per recording with one click. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code PGFP and you'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.